Right now, a hidden biological phenomenon is silently caramelizing your proteins, stiffening your arteries, and prematurely aging your cells from the inside out. Millions of health-conscious individuals are systematically destroying their metabolic health every single morning, not by eating junk food, but simply by eating perfectly healthy foods in the wrong exact sequence. This is the glucose roller coaster, a destructive metabolic loop that modern society has normalized as standard daily energy fluctuations. Every time your blood sugar violently spikes and crashes, it triggers an invisible, irreversible cellular event called glycation, creating advanced glycation end products, which are appropriately abbreviated as AGEs. In this extensive analysis, we are decoding the exact underlying biochemistry of insulin resistance, exposing the precise cellular carnage caused by daily glucose volatility, and handing you the 3 peer-reviewed sequencing protocols engineered to flatten your glucose curve, maximize fat oxidation, and protect your cellular machinery without forcing you to change a single food you love to eat. To fix a broken metabolism, we have to look entirely past the outdated, overly simplistic calories in, calories out paradigm and look directly at hormone kinetics and receptor dynamics. When you consume carbohydrates, starches, or sugars, your digestive system breaks them down into glucose molecules, which rapidly enter your bloodstream. In response to this rising tidal wave of sugar, your pancreas secretes a master storage hormone known as insulin. Think of insulin like a biological key. Its precise job is to travel through the bloodstream, dock onto specialized insulin receptors on your muscle and liver cells, and unlock those cells so they can absorb the circulating glucose to burn it for immediate energy or store it as glycogen. However, when you subject your body to constant, unregulated glucose spikes throughout the day, your pancreas is forced to keep insulin levels perpetually elevated to dangerous thresholds. Over time, your cells realize they are being overwhelmed by this constant hormonal flood, and to protect themselves from metabolic burnout, they begin to downregulate, pulling their insulin receptors inside the cell membrane. The cells become profoundly numb, which is the exact molecular mechanism of insulin resistance. Because the cellular doors are now locked shut from the inside, glucose remains completely trapped within your bloodstream, unable to be utilized for energy. Your brain, sensing that the cells are structurally starving despite the high sugar environment, panics and commands the pancreas to pump out even more insulin to force the doors open. You are now officially trapped in a hyperinsulinemic loop, a chronic state that completely shuts down your body's ability to activate hormone-sensitive lipase, meaning it is biochemically impossible for you to burn stored body fat for fuel. But the true danger of unmanaged glucose spikes goes far beyond fat accumulation. It lies in a destructive, non-enzymatic chemical reaction called glycation. When a massive surge of glucose floods your bloodstream, the excess sugar molecules randomly and aggressively collide with healthy proteins and fats in your body. Without the supervision of stabilizing enzymes, these sugars permanently bind to the proteins, cross-linking their delicate structures in a process that represents literal cellular caramelization. This chaotic binding creates advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. Think of AGEs like rust inside your biological machinery. Once these toxic compounds are formed, they cannot be broken down or undone by the body. They permanently cross-link with your skin's collagen and elastin fibers, creating deep structural wrinkles and a loss of tissue elasticity. More critically, they attack and stiffen your endothelial tissue, which is the ultradelicate inner lining of your entire blood vessel network, drastically increasing cardiovascular strain, restricting nitric oxide production, and causing profound, localized mitochondrial dysfunction. Clinical trials tracking long-term metabolic health reveal a shocking truth: it is not your average baseline blood sugar that drives systemic cellular aging and vascular decay, it is the volatility coefficient. The sheer height and frequency of your daily glucose spikes are the true drivers of systemic cellular rust and cellular senescence. Fortunately, you do not need to adopt an unsustainable, highly restrictive diet to completely halt this destructive process. Instead, clinical data demonstrates that you can radically flatten your glucose curve and protect your system by deploying 3 precise biochemical interventions. The first intervention is the kinetic sequence protocol. The absolute physical order in which you put food into your mouth completely transforms its subsequent metabolic and hormonal impact. If you begin a meal by eating naked carbohydrates, they pass instantly through your stomach into the small intestine, breaking down into glucose and rocketing into your bloodstream within minutes. However, if you consciously structure your meal to eat your fiber first, your proteins and fats second, and your starches and sugars last, you alter the physics of digestion. When fiber hits your digestive tract first, it creates a viscous, gelatinous mesh-like lining along the walls of your small intestine. This biological barrier significantly slows down the gastric emptying rate and delays the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream. You can eat the exact same meal with the exact same caloric value, but simply by changing the sequence, you reduce the subsequent glucose spike by up to 75%, preventing the compensatory insulin surge entirely. The second intervention is the activation of the GLUT4 muscle sponge pathway. To rapidly clear excess glucose from your bloodstream without forcing your pancreas to oversecrete insulin, you must manually activate your body's largest metabolic clearance sink, which is your skeletal muscle tissue. Engaging in just 10 to 15 minutes of light physical activity, such as a continuous brisk walk, within 30 minutes of finishing a meal triggers your skeletal muscles to actively contract. This mechanical contraction bypasses the standard insulin pathway entirely, signaling specialized glucose transporters called GLUT4 channels to migrate from the inside of the cell directly to the plasma membrane. These channels act like automated vacuum systems, pulling glucose directly out of your blood independently of insulin, safely blunting the metabolic spike and protecting your endothelial lining from glycation. The third intervention is the deployment of the acetic acid brake. Before consuming a meal that you know is heavily loaded with carbohydrates or starches, introduce 1 tablespoon of organic apple cider vinegar diluted in a glass of water. Vinegar contains high concentrations of acetic acid. Clinical literature demonstrates that when acetic acid enters your system prior to starch consumption, it temporarily deactivates alpha-amylase, which is the primary digestive enzyme in your saliva and pancreatic juices responsible for breaking down complex starches into simple glucose sugars. By temporarily putting the brakes on this enzyme, the conversion rate of food into blood sugar is dramatically slowed down, effectively transforming what would have been a violent, jagged glucose spike into a smooth, manageable, slow metabolic release that your body can easily process without triggering an emergency insulin response. Controlling these daily glucose curves is the absolute baseline foundation required to halt advanced glycation, reverse insulin resistance, and protect your cellular machinery from premature rust. But flattening your daily spikes is only half the battle. If your body is already burdened by years of accumulated cellular waste, oxidized lipids, and senescent zombie cells, you must actively trigger your internal recycling systems to clear the slate completely. To achieve this deep systemic purge, you must master the precise hourly timeline of deep, cellular fasting. As an advanced, critical extension of this metabolic framework, there is a dangerous biological blind spot you must audit that a standard continuous glucose monitor will completely fail to detect: the fructose illusion. Unlike glucose, which enters your general bloodstream and registers immediately on your skin sensors, fructose is processed exclusively by your liver. When you consume concentrated fructose, whether from hidden high fructose corn syrup or excessive naked fruit juices, it bypasses your blood entirely, traveling straight to the hepatic system where it is rapidly converted into visceral liver fat. This triggers non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, a silent driver of systemic insulin resistance that destroys your metabolic baseline from behind the scenes, all while your daily glucose graphs look completely flat, stable, and healthy. To truly verify if you have escaped the algorithm trap, you must look entirely beyond standard medical markers like HbA1c, which only tracks a lagging 3-month average of your blood sugar. Instead, you must run a specific fasting insulin test. A standard blood panel can mask cellular degradation for over a decade because your pancreas will exhaust itself aggressively overproducing insulin just to keep your baseline glucose normal. An optimized fasting insulin score should strictly sit below 5 microunits per milliliter. If your numbers register in the double digits, your biological engines are already suffering severe strain, no matter how clean your daily diet seems. Combine your nutrient sequencing with this precise biomarker audit to truly insulate your cells from premature decay.